All throughout the past few years that I spent with them, my biological parents had never had much involvement in my life. They never made an effort to do anything special for me. Each year on my birthday, I received nothing. Not so much as a simple, happy birthday, and there was never any cake, either. I'd be surprised to find out that they had even known my birthday, for I doubt that they even remembered the day that I was born. Still, you'd think that they would have some form of celebration, but no. I suppose some of this can be credited to the fact that my father was an extreme alcoholic. Mixed with my mother's addiction to drugs, this made for quite the toxic cocktail. My parents even refused to celebrate the arguably most important holiday, yes, Christmas. So, until I began school, I had never even heard of the Santa Claus. The first time that I had heard of him, I was 4 years old. The other children and the teachers at the preschool that I attended spoke of him non-stop when the holiday season approached. It seemed like I was the only one there that hadn't the slightest idea of who he was, and so I learned from my classmates. Some of the things that I heard most often was that his hair was white as snow and that he had a long beard to match. He dressed in white and red. He was always happy. Blushy cheeks and even a chubby body as well. Legend had it that on Christmas Eve, Santa stopped by every house in the world to deliver presents to the children who had been nice, but never the naughty ones. I remember the confusion that I felt. Had I been naughty? For I had never gotten any presents on Christmas before. I didn't understand. I would have to ask my father. Yes, he would have the answer. Unless, of course, they were oblivious to Santa Claus. The memory of me sitting on the cement sidewalk after school that day was so clear inside my mind. I waited for Daddy for about an hour, but that wasn't really unusual. He had a tendency to sleep in late since most nights he stayed out until dawn drinking. Finally, he arrived. The car had such a strong aroma of liquor, but that was just another thing that wasn't unusual. That afternoon, Daddy had yelled at me. He told me to get in the car right that second or he would leave me there to rot. It was clear he was drunk and grumpy. I decided to ask him about Santa Claus anyways. Daddy, why doesn't Santa Claus bring me presents? To this day, I remember the way he looked at me. His eyes were filled with so much hate and malice. Why do you ask such stupid questions? Good God, child, you should know the answer to that, he said to me, shaking his head in displeasure. Looking back, I should have known better than to ask him when he was in one of those moods, but still I continued to push for an answer. I don't know, why doesn't he come to our house, Daddy? This time he closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and gave me the answer. Because he isn't real. There's your answer. Does that make you happy? I knew better than to say anything at the time. I remember feeling my eyes water, then it became full-blown crying. I never brought up St. Nick to my father ever again from that day on. Weeks passed as normal, with no mention of Santa from my parents. Surprise, surprise. Before I knew it, there was only 1 week until Christmas Eve. I begged each and every night before I went to bed for Santa to come. I was so hopeful. I was counting on him. Every waking moment was spent thinking about the toys that he would bring me. I daydreamed about the night that he would finally stop by my house. My mother read my enthusiasm and, in a time of sobriety, assisted me in baking chocolate chip cookies alongside a glass of warm milk for Santa. It was so impossible to sleep that night. I didn't want to go to sleep. I wanted to see Santa. That way I could brag to all the other children that I had seen him, and they had not. My plan came crashing down when my mother told me that he would only come if I was sleeping. Hesitantly, I dozed off, only to be awoken just 2 hours later by thudding footsteps and creaking floorboards. Sitting up in bed, I glanced at the clock, which read 3:26 a.m. Who was awake at this type of hour? Naturally, I would have assumed it was my dad, but it wasn't. For once, he had gotten home and inside his bed at a reasonable hour. I decided to investigate. Slowly, I crept out of my bed, quiet as I could. I tiptoed to the doorway, peeking out into the living room on the first floor. All of the lights were out, and the room appeared to be empty. Eerie. I continued to stare out into the darkness. In a way, it was entrancing. It was like a dark, vacant void. After several minutes of searching the room and finding nothing, I retreated to the comfort of my bed. I spent a while tossing and turning, trying to fall back asleep. Suddenly, I heard these voices. Voices that were coming from inside the house. These voices were not those of my parents. I wasn't able to place them. My first thought was Santa, but I saw the flashing lights. The voices came from something much less exciting. They were coming from the television. Who turned it on? And who was watching TV at that hour? Once again, I decided that I should examine the room. The bright lights from the screen allowed me to see the silhouette of what seemed to be a man sitting on the couch. I could see the back of his head. He wore a stocking cap. It was red. I looked at this strange man and I was scared. There was an intruder. I needed my mommy and daddy. I stood in front of their door, holding back tears. I turned the handle. Locked. I thought of banging on the door, but that would only draw attention. He would hear and he would hurt me. I would go to the neighbors for help, but that would mean using the front door in the living room. It didn't faze me. I would find another way to escape. I would get help. Tiptoeing across the floor, I headed for the bathroom. There was a window there, and if I was lucky, I would get out uninjured. It was only a 2-story drop. All of a sudden, the wood from below me let out a loud creak. This sound echoed. I can tell you that when somebody's watching you, you can feel it. You can feel their eyes looking at you. I turned my head and my eyes met his. His face was awful. His features deformed. He had a long white beard, just like they said he would, but they didn't warn me about his skin. His skin was red. It looked so thick and dark. Its texture resembled that of a reptile, leathery. A hue of sky blue were his eyes, though it was obvious that they were not normal. They looked hazy and glazed over. Back then I didn't understand. How could somebody look like that? But I know now that he was a burn victim, that fire got him good. His whole face was painful to look at. Santa Claus is a monster, I thought to myself. As our eyes met, a sickly grin fell upon his face. His smile didn't look human. Bits of flesh were stuck between each of those yellow teeth. My entire body trembled. Panicking, I rushed into my room and slammed the door behind me. There was a loud slam. Crawling into bed, I pulled the covers up over my face, revealing only my eyes. Moments of silence passed, then creak, creak, creak. Each time the creaks got louder. All of a sudden, creak! I could hear it just outside my room, and then I tensed up. The next creak was not on the floor. Instead, the creak was at my door. Slowly, gently, he opened my door. Shivering, I managed to spit out the single word, "Santa?" The creature smiled that sickly smirk once more. Then he laughed. The laugh wasn't evil, but it chilled me to my bones. It almost sounded childish. Yeah, it resembled the laugh of a little boy. He didn't appear to be moving or doing anything. Motionless, the monster just stood there. I could see then that he was dressed in red and white, and there were blood-stained clothes. Slowly, his grin faded. Taking its place was a more serious expression. And then he walked away. Creak, creak, creak. They became quieter each time they occurred, and after a while, there was no creak at all. Whoever this man was, he didn't mean harm to me, or he would have murdered me right then and there. So I decided to rest. Exhaustion overtook me, and so I gave in. I woke up at 9 o'clock sharp the next morning, ready to begin the celebration. The door to my parents' room was now unlocked and wide open. I jumped on their bed shouting, "Mommy, Mommy! Daddy, Daddy! Santa came! Santa came! I bet he brought gifts!" Nothing. No movement. I lifted the covers, and what I found is truly gruesome. That day marked the very early loss of my childhood innocence. I was only 4 years old. Under the covers were my parents' corpses. The scene was in no way a pleasant one. Both their bodies had been cut up. Internal organs were removed. There were so many cuts on their skin. Between them there were 2 boxes. Both were shaped like hearts, wrapped with silver ribbons. It was some kind of sick, ironic joke. Each box contained a heart, a real human heart. Both of them had green ribbon tied around their chests. On my father there was a note tied down. It read, "Dear Taylor, you have been very nice this year, and not at all naughty. Although I have been quite naughty. Hope you have enjoyed your present. Merry Christmas. Love, Santa Claus." After my parents' untimely death, I was sent to live with my grandparents. They're the ones who raised me. However, I am of legal age and I live alone. I decided to share my story because I saw Santa again. Recently, my neighbors were brutally murdered. When the police got there, there were hardly anything left of the body. All of the flesh had been removed. They lived right across the street from me. I could see into their rooms at night. Well, instead of them in the window, I see his face. He looks at me and he smiles and waves. He hasn't changed. He looks just like he did 17 years ago. I wanted presents. I wanted Santa Claus. I never wanted this.